Good morning. Our prelude this morning is from the Singing Living Tradition hymnal, number 389, Gathered Here. Please join me. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. One more time. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gather here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near.
Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton and our very first live stream service from the sanctuary. My name is Mary Ellen Scanlon, and I am very pleased to be your service leader today. Each Sunday, we begin our service by acknowledging the Indigenous people on whose territory this building sits. Since the beginning of our online services, some have joined us from locations outside the Hamilton area, also on traditional and unceded territories of Original peoples. Many of us have visited other places in the past year where we were guests of the Indigenous people there. For part of the year, I joined our services from the traditional Anishinaabeg territory on lands occupied by the peoples of Nipissing and Dokis First Nations, whose Aboriginal and treaty rights are recognized by the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850. Wherever you are this morning, I invite you to reflect on the original peoples of that place and seek to respect their legacy of stewardship, hospitality, and generosity. I want to thank today's service team, which includes Reverend Jamie, guest Amy Sewell, musical ministers Rachel Derry and Cindy Carey, religious educator Tim Versteeg and Petra Versteeg. Special thanks to the technical team for getting us to this important day. Brian Carey, John Elliott, Tim Versteeg, Marianne Forbes, John Pegg, and Bruce McPherson. At the end of the service, just before breakout rooms, we will be conducting a Zoom poll regarding the reopening of the church. Please stay for this poll to assist in the important decisions being made about our reopening. You are welcome to this community, especially those who are searching for a spiritual home. Many of us were once seeking something larger than ourselves to which we could belong. A sense of rootedness to hold us as we create meaning together. We do that well here, though not perfectly. In this congregation, we strive not for perfection, but for authenticity and connection. Each time we gather, we light a chalice. It reminds us that we are entering sacred space and time together. It reminds us of our connection to Unitarian Universalists all over the world. With that global connection in mind, we remember that December 1st is World AIDS Day, and that HIV/AIDS impacts millions of people. No longer in the headlines, this disease is still a daily reality for people here and abroad. We remember all those affected and commend organizations like Blooms for Africa, who provides financial support to African grandmothers, their families, and communities. Please join me in reciting our Unison Chalice lighting words. May this flame be our light of friendship and love. Unitarian Universalism has roots in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Some UUs identify as Christian, others don't. Yet during the holiday season, we all have something we can find illuminating, comforting, challenging, or fulfilling by reinterpreting old traditions. This year during Advent, we'll light candles in a wreath, one for each Sunday leading up to Christmas, plus one more in the center for Christmas Eve. We'll light these Advent candles, one more each week, to remember hope, peace, joy, and love. As we light them throughout this season of waiting, let us remember to be fully present in the moment with each other, with ourselves, with the source of blessing as we understand it to be. As I light the candle of hope, consider these words from climate scientist Katherine Hayhoe. If we wait for hope, we'll never find it. If we wait for someone else to fix the problem, we'll never solve it. But when we go out and look for hope, when we take action together, when we raise our voices to call for change, that's when we find that hope is all around us.
Good morning. My name is Jamie Boyce, and I have the great joy of serving this congregation as the interim minister. Today, we have good news to celebrate. Yesterday, the delegates at the Canadian Unitarian Council voted overwhelmingly to affirm the eighth principle. We join Unitarian Universalists around Canada and the United States in celebrating this collective commitment to our faith. Today, as the candle of hope burns bright in our midst, we are reminded that whoever you are, wherever you are in your life journey, you are welcome here. Let us open our hearts and minds as we gather for worship on this glorious day. Please join us for our first hymn, Gather the Spirit.
Good morning. Hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit. And this is a hymn written by prolific UU composer Jim Scott.
story today is from a series called I Am Like a Tree, which is from the Strong Nations Publishing Company, an Indigenous company out in the West Coast. Today's story is about barks and knots, and is a story of courage and struggles by Carrie Armstrong and Terry Mack, illustrated by Lisa Shim. The bark represents our courage, the knots represent our struggles, and is told as a dialogue between a mother and her daughter. For the adult, knots in the past make gaping holes. There were many times in my life when I struggled.
I have struggled too. Tell me a story about a struggle that you've had. Tree is in present self and offers to listen.
Knots long ago struggled to learn that it was not their fault. I had a friend who was a very good friend. One day, we had an argument.
I have fights with my friends all the time. Tree shows that Trunk is patient, calm, and mindful.
Tree offered safety and protection at that time, and Seeds survived. Yes, we had a disagreement. I believed that I was right and that my friend was wrong. I decided that I wanted to believe in my own words and stand up for myself.
I'm usually right, and my friends are usually wrong. I understand. Tree grows bark to stay strong as self.
Bark, at that time, needed help to problem solve so they could stay as self. While we were arguing, I became very anxious. I didn't like that my friend wasn't really listening to me. I felt that no matter what I said, my friend would tell me that I was wrong. Then I began to believe that I was.
So your friend wasn't being very nice. Tree teaches that leaves belong just the way they are.
Bark, at the time, tried to problem solve. No, not nice at all. So much that my friend ended our friendship.
What? Your friend never talked to you again because of this? Tree sees Trunk bend and sway and patiently listens.
Knots struggled to learn that it was not their fault. Yes, our friendship was over because of what I did.
How did you feel? Tree kindly teaches roots to respect others.
Knots had gaping holes that needed mending. I felt like I was grieving a death. I felt lonely and guilty, and then ashamed of the way I had acted. I thought about my friend a lot and always believed that it was all my fault that we were no longer friends.
Was it your fault? Tree relies on roots to be respectful.
Tree listens while knots begin to see. It was not their fault. You know, I struggled with that for quite some time. Then one day I talked to another friend and shared the story. Talking helped me to see my own part of this story. It helped me to see, well, who I really am.
Why did talking about it help? Will talking help me with my struggles? Will I see who I really am? Bark wants help to problem solve, to stay as its present self.
Tree teaches bark to grow and protect self. By sharing the story, I learned that my old friend had really disrespected me. I learned that I showed courage that day when I stood up for myself, and I was being fair and kind.
So talking helped you see things better? Tree shows that knots will heal.
Tree arrives in a place of present self, having healed. Tree will continue to grow through courage and struggle. Yes, we learn from our struggles. They can help us to find courage and believe in ourselves. I learned that this is who I have been all along. I just needed to remind myself to shine again.
I'll remember to be myself. Thank you for sharing. Tree shows courage and bark strengthens self.
How do you take care of yourself so that your light can shine? We will now join together in song singing This Little Light of Mine, number 118.
Number 118, This Little Light of Mine. Here we go. This little light of mine, well, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Well, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Well, building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Now that our energy is lifted, we can rest inside a time of reflection and meditation and prayer. Soften our hearts and welcome hope into the world. I invite us to drift into a reflection. Allow our shoulders to relax and perhaps rest a hand on our heart. Feel a place of connection and grounding. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Spirit of hope. Today we celebrate our changing faith that is learning to become a radically inclusive space for all people. We hold gently that change is painful, that celebrations are often bittersweet, and we pause in the complexity of our feelings and notice whatever is there for us. Notice it with tenderness and acceptance. May this season of celebration hold space for the beauty and complexity of our days, moments of joy, moments of laughter, delight, and soulful listening and connection. May the earth hold us in love. May the sky comfort us in care, and may we notice the leaping of our hearts with hope. May there be peace in our hearts and peace in the world. Let us share a moment of silence together.
Like a tree, I will bend when the wind comes to call. Like a flower, I will turn to the light. Like a stream, I will flow round the stone in my path. Like a rock, I will stand for what's right. Like a tree, I will bend when the wind comes to call. Like a flower, tree I will bend when the wind comes to call. Like a flower I will turn to the light. Like a stream I will flow round the stone in my path. Like a rock I will stand for the right.
Social platitudes are interesting to me. They catch my attention with their shiny packaging as digestible nuggets of life-changing wisdom that, when unwrapped, are complicated morsels that reveal a larger story and point us towards a set of cultural expectations hidden inside. The title of this talk, "When the Going Gets Tough, the Tough Get Going," is a platitude that has persistently irritated me with its hidden agenda and self-help swagger. Have you heard this phrase in your life, that when the going gets tough, the tough get going? It suggests to me that the answer to life's challenges is to keep going, to get to work, to meet obstacles and hardship with grit and determination. I notice a coded suggestion about resilience, about facing suffering with a settler mindset, as if our problems, our suffering can be occupied and conquered by sheer willpower. It is a model of resiliency that celebrates grit and determination of an individual in the absence of community. As you might guess, I question the balance of this approach and the proliferation of hyper-individuated approaches to coping that isolate people from connection and distract from addressing the oppressive frames and systemic violence that require endless adaptations of hard work for survival. The pandemic has surfaced an important question for me. Why is being tough the answer to life's sufferings? Where is vulnerability, compassion, and caring, and community? When we talk about resiliency, are we noticing how privilege shapes the conversation, and at what point is there a distinction between life's expected existential challenges and the chronic and acute violence and inequities that are structured into the world? I draw my questions and challenge to the logic of resiliency from two sources that inform my journey of discovery and understanding as I unpack the relationship between resiliency and hope. The first is from Shelley Rambo and her assertion that theological language must learn to stay with suffering even as it points to hope and love. And for Unitarian Universalists, I'll add the beloved community that we name and ascribe into the aspirations of our faith. This happens inside the sacred and holy act of bearing witness to what remains of trauma, what survives from suffering. Such witnessing delivers hope into the world. Rambo does not propose a solution to suffering, to trauma, but rather a relational commitment to life beyond death. I notice this approach and the beauty of our spaces, our Chalice groups, our caucus spaces, our small group ministries, are places of connection and storytelling, which are opportunities to see and be seen with vulnerability and care. We witness each other, we affirm life, and the world is changed. The second person I have been journeying with is Dr. Roberta Timothy at the University of Toronto. I recently discovered a podcast series called Don't Call Me Resilient. Dr. Timothy claims an intersectional political analysis that locates the category of resilient as a colonial project that distracts from transforming state-sponsored systems of oppression and violence. Dr. Timothy names resiliency, survival, as the ordinary everyday experience for Indigenous, racialized, purposefully marginalized, disabled, queer, and low-wealth communities, and rejects resiliency as a necessarily helpful category. Rather, Dr. Timothy centers resistance to colonial structures of violence and harm and is committed to nurturing postures and communities of resistance that truly transform the conditions that create suffering. As I sit with Dr. Timothy's conversation and feel my own controlling grip on life release and open, I'm inspired by resistance as a posture and position of the self and the body towards hope, towards a radical optimism that refuses to erase, elide, evade, or excuse the conditions of suffering. This resonates with our Unitarian Universalist commitment to affirm and promote individual and communal action that accountably dismantles racism and systemic barriers to full inclusion in ourselves and in our institutions. There is good reason to feel hopeful. This does bring me to a hard observation, a bearing witness to acts of resistance. It's important to make clear that the journey of the eighth principle has been painful for many people in Unitarian Universalist communities across Canada and the US. While Unitarian Universalist communities are celebrating today, it is also important that the institutional habit of weaponizing rules and privileging process over relationship not be ignored. There is hurt to bear witness to in our midst, pain to hold with love and tenderness. Unitarian Universalist communities need to be held accountable so that our communities can truly transform into spaces where people can be radically welcomed. And saying this does not distract from the celebration at hand. It simply tells the truth with clarity and transparency, surfacing emotional complexity and honesty that makes room for joy and grief. It is an important attribute of collective resiliency and resistance. It is also an act of hope. I have a final story of hope and endurance, and it's about a story of First Unitarian Hamilton. A few weeks ago, our church historian Bill Johnston took me on a walking tour of the neighborhood. During our walk, we visited each of the church's previous locations in Kirkendall. We paused and stood in front of the house on Aberdeen. My imagination marveled at the thought of church services in the living room with religious education upstairs. I thought of the cozy family feeling inspired by Unitarian values and a vision of the world that led the congregation to move to a building on Locke Street. Pausing at the Locke Street building, I saw a more classical, churchy building, and I longed to go inside and feel the space hug me. As Bill spoke about the history of the building, I could picture the pews, the songs, the meetings, and the promise of an emergent, growing Unitarian Universalist community. As we walked from Locke Street to our current location here on Dundurn, he shared the story of the processional, how the congregation gathered and walked together to your new home, where we are today, 170 Dundurn. It was a holy walk that celebrated the future, the building of a new community, and simultaneously grieved the past. It was a walk of hope and promise, and arriving at that holy walk, I imagine, wasn't easy. I bet not everybody thought it was a great idea to move house again. Yet, here we are, returning after 20 months of being away from our space. We are back. We are back at 170 Dundurn, worshiping with you, celebrating life with you. When I hear this story of the congregation's journey, what I hear is the marvelous way in which each step was full of collective courage, commitment, and hope. This month, we will keep leaning into the theme of celebration, delve into moments that will lift up joy, connection, and a radical optimism for the future. We'll do this inside the very real tension that the logic of celebration and hope is constituted and shaped by our sorrows and pains, our disappointments, and our struggles. Today, we celebrate hope because there are days, weeks, years where hope feels far away and distant. We light the candle of hope because sometimes we need to see it to believe it. Let us celebrate the small miracles of our lives, our friendships, our communities, and draw close to the hope awakening in our midst. As Elia Wiesel wrote in his Nobel Peace Prize speech in 1986, just as man cannot live without dreams, he cannot live without hope. If dreams reflect the past, hope summons the future. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. Please join us for our final hymn, I Know I Can.
Number 1015, I Know I Can. Though days be dark with storms and burdens weigh my heart, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on.
begins at sundown today. And as it is nearly noon, which means that the sun will soon be setting here in our part of the world, we light the first candle of the menorah. I invite Amy Sewell, who is joining us by Zoom, to say the blessing for this first night.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu ladliknei Chanukah. Amen. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Amen.
Beloveds, thank you for joining us on this first live stream event from our sanctuary. It has been a joy to be with you, and thank you to everyone here who made this possible. May the candle of hope be a beacon in our lives, a source of inspiration to the world. We extinguish this chalice, but not the fire in our hearts. Until we meet again, go in peace.
I am resilient. I trust the movement. I negate the chaos. Uplift the negative. I'll show up at the table again and again and again. I'll shut my mouth and learn to listen. Whoa, 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 whoa. These times are poignant. The winds have shifted. It's all we can do to stay uplifted. Pipelines through backyards, wolves howling at front. Yeah, I've got my crew, but truth is what I want. So realize an ongoing power to the peaceful, prayers to the waters, women at the center. All vessels open to give and receive. Let's see the system brought down to its knees. Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm made of thunder. I'm made of lightning. I'm made of dirt, yeah. Made of the fine things. My father taught me that I'm a speck of dust, and this world was made for me. So let's go and try our luck, yeah. I've got my roots down, 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 down deep. I've got my roots down, down, down deep. What are we doing here? What has been done? What are we gonna do about it when the world comes undone? Well, my voice feels so small, I'm sure so does yours. But us all together, hear a mighty roar. Roar, a mighty roar. I am resilient. I trust the movement. I negate the chaos. Uplift the negative. I'll show up at the table again and again and again.